Koraly. It's always a pleasure catching up with you, especially since I've spent hours and late nights reading this book. The Mother Must Die.
It's always a pleasure talking to you too.
Thank you. The Mother Must Die. I kept thinking about, like, the mother must die. If I was to say to someone, she's written a book, it's called The Mother Must Die, essentially someone will say, okay, whose mother must die? But when you actually read it, you can actually think back, especially when in our age group, our parents migrated and the Italians migrated and all the ethnics migrated, then you kind of understand it. And it's like, you know, one of the mothers was saying, I think it'll be fun, I just want to die. You know, like seriously, too many times I thought, I really must die. That's not really good for my mental health, actually. But there have been times in a funny way or in a sorrow way, you know, when there's something's happened and it's too much, it's like, oh my God, that'll be fun, I just want to die, I can't do this. Yeah. So people need to understand when it says the mother must die, it's not us saying your mother must die. It's the mother just feels like, it'd be easy if I just died, dead, died, okay. This book you've dedicated to your Yaya.
Yes.
I want to touch on your short story and poetry teacher from RMIT, Anya Wolwitz.
Yes.
You do write about her, she supported you. Give us a little bit of a background story.
So Anya is no longer with us. She passed away during COVID. And when I started going to RMIT professional writing and editing, that was when I met Anya, and I was married at the time, and I went into her class and I said to her, teach me how to write poetry. I want to learn the rules. And she said, there are no rules. If we all sounded the same and followed the same rules, how boring would that be?
Exactly.
And I was very lucky that Anya was my teacher, because most teachers in literature would never say that to you. They would say that there are rules. And I did 2 of Anya's poetry classes, and I also did one of her short story classes. And I wrote a lot of the stories that are in the book in her class. And it was interesting because anyone that has studied with Anya will know that she never really kind of spoke negatively about your work. Even when you submitted assignments, she would always be like, oh, why don't you consider this, or why don't you consider that? But she never said, oh, that way is wrong, that way is wrong.
Okay.
You know, so because of that, she really encouraged me to tap into my own voice. And it was actually while I was taking her classes that my whole life fell apart, because I got divorced and all that. So it was during all that time. And Anya and I actually became friends after.
As you do.
Yeah, and I was actually one of the last people to see her before she passed away as well.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. So,
well, the legacy still continues in here.
Yes, I'm sure she'll be very proud of the book.
You know what? She's going to be very proud, but I hope she's looking down right now and she's up there really laughing, because I really do want to take the mickey out of it in a good way.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a personal question. At the start of the book, it does say everything's fictional. I know legally we need to do that. Koraly, is there any part of this book that maybe, just maybe, it's a little bit of your own experience?
I do take inspiration from stories I hear from other people that are real,
yes.
Things that I read, and also my own life. So,
okay.
You know, it's a mix of everything, and a lot of it's also fictionalized as well.
Yes.
Because actually people don't know this from me because they know me from my poetry mostly, but my first love was fiction writing. The first thing I started writing was my fiction novel that is still unpublished. And these stories have been finished for a very long time, like almost 10 years. So that was my first love. And the poetry came about as a way of survival. Like I was writing to like kind of liberate myself with each poem. And so I never saw my poetry as my main love. My main love is fiction.
Fiction.
You know, I love to create.
Can we just pretend that these are real stories? Like seriously, the last story, like I must say, the book has, every chapter is a different story.
Yes.
I didn't know what I was going to find. I didn't know whether it was a story that started and it's going to be like a movie, part 2, part 6, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it was like your brain's gone from this to this, and I liked it because it changed. and then you need to refocus.
Yes.
My favourite one, and geez, I love it, is the one online dating.
Yeah.
Online, did you ever online date?
Yes, of course I did. I don't
Online
now,
dating.
but I used to. So that story is called the F Buddy.
Yeah, the F buddy, I like it.
I won't say the full word, but yeah.
Because it was so cute. Like, she didn't know what she wanted, but she wanted to meet someone. And if you think about everyday life, like I've done it, and those thoughts that you wrote, it's true. You do wonder, is this person going to be nice to me? Is he going to be an F buddy? Is he looking for a relationship? All that kind of stuff. And although I think she was looking for a relationship or to prove she could find someone decent to go up against her friend that had passed away, in the end, she only really needed a F buddy, really. And look, you know what? Let's face it. Sometimes when you go through shit in life and you're not really ready for a relationship, well, it's either yourself or it's the F buddy.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, and the way you touch on it, it's written really well. Like, I really do like it, and it really made me feel like I could have been her. I could place myself into her, and the way she becomes obsessed, which is true. You know, you sort of think, nah, okay, thank you very much. Don't want to see you anymore. That's done. You know, I feel great now. I can move on. And it's like, wouldn't mind round 2 or round 3. You know, and then you become obsessed.
Yeah, I think with that story, it was written at the time when online dating was fairly new. It's not new now.
Or was it RSVP?
Yeah, it was RSVP, you know, or whatever those. I think the website I used was OkCupid.
Oh, I never went on that one.
Yeah.
I did try RSVP, didn't go on that one.
But I think for me that story was also about cultural conditioning that we have as women, because the protagonist, Penny, she is thinking she wants a guy that ticks all the boxes. You know, she's still living at home with her
Look,
parents.
let's just face it, everybody. You cannot find the guy that ticks all the boxes online dating. You could go on Married at First Sight, because there has been some success stories there.
Yeah.
Maybe 1 or 2, but
yeah, but it was just that whole idea of that she always thought online dating was beneath her, and she went online to find the guy that ticks all the boxes. But in the end, what she found was a person, because the guy that she meets is also from her own culture, and she met someone that really challenged her ideas about her culture and all these expectations that she places on finding the right guy.
well, at least he was honest in the end. I mean, seriously, he got what he sort of wanted. I guess at some point he was worried, but then, you know, sometimes when we beg, we do get it. We are females. And then it's like, okay. Let's go on to the first story. So the first story, or the first few stories, were really cultural based back then in the 60s, the 70s, when everyone came to Australia or where they migrated to. Some were based on females, some were based on males. Sometimes I had to sort of think, hang on, are we going to talk about a female now or a male? It's like, no, okay, I'm on the right page now. And it's funny how when you think back, sometimes it still happens, where the parents want you to meet this person, where they say, I don't want you to bring a non-Greek into the house. It has to be the same race. Or, okay, you found someone, because I remember, and I'll be honest, I remember when I first got married, and my partner and I mean, my ex-partner and I, we're still very, very close. This is the father of my children. And when I think back, and I think, my goodness, I was so young, you know, 18 years old, 21 years old, I was holding my firstborn 10 months.
Wow.
10 months in my hands. We did my 21st and the christening together. And I remember that before I met him, I was meeting people, but going out and dating, but I wouldn't call them dating because I wasn't allowed to go out. So it's like, okay, I've just met someone. I can see him before work, after work, but that's it, because I'm not going to get home. And then I remember my cousin taking me out to some nightclubs. And I remember after the 4th nightclub, I remember hearing my dad say to my mum, you know what, like, we've got to marry her off now because, you know, she's getting out in this world. And I had a boyfriend, so to speak, and it was really cute. It was a very innocent relationship, very innocent. But I remember going to a dance, and I know you sort of touched there where you meet someone at a dance or a family function. And I remember he was going meow meow every time I walked past. Anyway, that meow meow, anyway, he met me. He found out, because obviously those circles, everybody knew everybody. And I remember working for I was doing an apprenticeship and working at a fashion store. And he came to the fashion store, he found out, and he came to see me. This is all in about 48 hours. And he said, do you mind if I come over tomorrow and I would do some lunch together? And I thought, okay, but can't go out because I'm not allowed to go out, right? So
you mean you're not allowed to have a boyfriend?
Like, you're not allowed to have a boyfriend, yeah.
Which is the same for me,
So he came, and at that time I was also doing modelling, and I had just got my portfolio, and we went and had lunch at the cafe, and I was so super excited because I was so young, like seriously, I was only 17, and I was going, look at these photos, innocent me. And he turned around and he said, well, it's either marriage or me. Now, remember, I only met him 3 days ago.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at him and going, marriage. Like, sometimes I think about that. I'm like, what made me say
what
that?
Do you mean? He said, is it marriage or...
Yeah, it's either going to be modelling
or marriage.
Oh,
modelling or marriage.
You can't have both.
You know what?
You can't have both.
And I really showed that in the book. Yeah.
And sometimes when I think about that, it's like, wow. That's how he was conditioned.
Yeah.
That's how I was conditioned. And I said, marriage. So I said to him, oh, well, I've got my graduation for my modelling. It's next week on this date, and I need to have a date. So he said, okay, I'll pick you up and take you. Okay, great. Anyway, so the week came, so I hadn't seen him again.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the second time. So the third time I see him, he picks me up to go to his graduation, and my father didn't want to go. He didn't want a bar of it. My mum and my nunno came, but my nunno was into photography and all that sort of stuff. Bless his soul now. And on the way to the reception, he pulls up in a laneway, and I've gone, oh my God, I'm going to get raped. Like, seriously, my daughters are watching this. They're going to be laughing. I seriously thought he was going to rape me.
Wow.
And he stops the car and he looks at me, and he had his V8, and he says, would you marry me? And I said, yes.
Is this your husband, the father of your children?
Yes.
Wow. Oh my God.
Yes. So basically within 2 weeks, I've accepted a proposal. And I went home and I told my mum and dad, and of course they were ecstatic. Then my auntie rocks up and she's like, I've got this guy I want you to meet. He's a real estate agent, da-di-da-di-da. And I said, oh, yeah, you know what? So sorry, thank you so much, but I've met somebody. And she goes, when? I go, 2 weeks ago. Okay. What's his surname? I go, I don't know. Where's he from? I don't know. Do you know anything about him? Yeah, he drives a V8. And I said, sorry, Thea. And she goes, what's he, Rick? I found you this rich guy. He's a real estate agent. He wants to have a family. I go, yeah. He's got lots of money. And then he'll have all his kids with me. I'll be stuck at home behind the sink, and he'll be out having affairs.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So when I read this book, I can really relate to some of my thought processes.
Yeah, because one of the characters, she does meet a guy who just says, it's either you can't be, because the girl is interested in acting, and then she meets him, and then he's just
can't have the both.
Yeah, he's like, you gotta drop that, And it was, actually, it was a story that I heard a lot. That never happened to me, but it was a story that I heard a lot of women having to give up certain things to be married, and it was just like almost like, oh, he must really love her. That's how we thought about it. Like, oh, he must really love her because he's telling her he loves her so much he wants her all to himself. But it's actually like the way patriarchy has conditioned women and men that we have to sacrifice for the right love.
Yeah, but times have evolved now, but they're still out there. So reading different stories, and again, stories based on the experience that the men were having with their family, it still happens, Koraly. It's not, it has changed, but not 100%. There's still a lot of cultures holding on to that old culture.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. But that story specifically was more, not so much about him saying that to her, but what the repercussions were in her life later on. That because that story actually spans quite a few years, you know, and it ended up being like a domestic violence situation and stuff like that. So I think it was I wanted to show that kind of gradual chipping away of a woman's you know, identity to be married, and then how women can be controlled and end up in a situation where they're being hurt, you know, because I think definitely with this book I wanted to show like subtle things that happen in our lives that we think nothing of at the time, but actually it's lots of subtle things that end up being a big thing that, you know, in the end. So and that's why I wanted to write in the male perspective as well, because I think lots of things happen with men that we overlook, but that do contribute to violence against women in the long term.
It does. And the anger, and again the way they've been conditioned by their fathers. The father's the role model. So when I was reading the story about the Italian guy, almost like a mafia sort of thing, you know, and there's double standards. I know that's changed again, but it still is out there to some degree. And women being afraid to leave, until in one of your stories, she actually had the courage and left, packed and went. But again, that takes courage. It
depends on the situation. Like one of the characters leaves quite easily from her marriage, but she has to cut out her whole family because they want her to go back, you know.
That's right.
Whereas the other character was really hard for her to leave because she was getting hurt, you know, within the relationship. So there's lots of different reasons. You know, women struggle to leave.
They do.
You know, it doesn't matter whether the person's they're getting hit or not. You know, it's still hard, and especially I wanted to show with you know, just how culture and family can also contribute to a woman not leaving. You know, I wanted to show that.
Yes.
You know, because when they're like, again, because there's this whole thing of like, in our culture, you'll know, you know, when someone says, oh, like I want to leave my marriage, they're like, well, is he hitting you? It's like, as long as
why are you leaving?
You can't leave basically unless he's hitting you. That also dismisses, like, you know, a partner being controlling, or a partner being not necessarily hitting you, but being controlling, you know, emotional abuse. You know, what about also the fact that it's like we don't have any choice? Like, what if I'm not happy in this relationship? Do I have to stay because that's what women are supposed to do?
Well, I remember, you know, we're talking over 20 years ago, or maybe even later than that, where I'd spoken to a few people, and some would say, well, you know, the way it was back in the days is you met someone, as I did with my partner, my husband, the father of my children. You meet someone, you get married, and then you fall in love. Like my current partner, his father told me a story, and I was just laughing when he said to me, you know, he came to Australia, he was young, in the music industry, this, that, and the other, and then one day he was broke and he thought, I need a wife. And he's walking down the road and he sees these women, and because it was a small Greek community at the time, he found out where she lived, and within a week or two he got married. But he said it's basically, I met her, the next day we got married at the registry. And I said, but you didn't fall in love. He goes, but I needed a wife, you know. But their marriage lasted till she passed away. And there's been some great stories that have come out of there. And they've had, you know, children and all that. So some have been success stories. But then you've got the other stories where it's, well, you know, that's how it was for me. That's how it was for your yaya. So it's the same. Or, you know, I used to get hit. My mum used to get hit. It's the norm. But now there is awareness out, and we're being educated that that's not right. But there are women that still say in the marriage, not because of fear to leave, but because they don't know what real love is. They've conditioned themselves to think that he hits me because he loves me. And I've known a story where something had happened to a woman like that, and she had children, and the right guy did come along and took her out of that relationship and loved her how she should have been loved. And yet years later, she went back to the ex
Wow.
because she couldn't understand the love he was giving her. She didn't feel love because that's what she thought love was, and that's how her mum knew love as being enuyaya.
Yeah.
So there's still stories like that that are still happening, and it's sad.
Yeah, and that's a lot of the research that I'm doing for my non-fiction book, Not Till You're Married, about how the trauma of your past affects your future and how you relate to love. So yeah, look, things definitely have changed, and you know, and definitely there are some cultures that are more traditional than the Greek culture at the moment.
And it's still happening. There's still the arranged marriages in the Asian culture, Indian culture.
Yeah. So, and I think also as well, like, you know, even my daughter, like, there's friends that she has that her parents are, you know, really strict as my parents used to be, you know, and I think, wow, like, we're still at that, like, do you know what I mean? It still happens. It's all kind of, you know, very hidden. And a lot of these little, what I like to call cultural nuances and that we kind of overlook, that we just think are just normal. Yeah. That I wanted to document in this book. Those little things.
I think you've documented everything really well in many ways, and I don't want to say too much because then it's going to kill the book. Yeah. But it is good. Like, you can't put it down because you're going thinking, okay, what is she going to talk about next? You know, it's the next part. I remember with my children growing up, and just going back to my parents, their train of thought, there was a time when I liked this Italian boy. Yeah. And they knew what a good boy he was. And we were friends from, I don't know, maybe the age of 6, 7, right up into early teenagehood. And I remember my mum saying to my dad, you know what? He would be perfect for our daughter.
If only he was Greek.
If only he was Greek. You know, and it's like, oh my goodness. And then I remember his parents saying, no, you got to marry an Italian girl. Yeah. Well, he went on to marry a non-Italian girl.
Wow.
The brother went on to marry someone who was divorced with children, and I'm thinking, well, there you go, suffer. Because you did that, because you didn't want a non, you know, it had to be an Italian girl. And my parents, I will say, and I'm so happy that they have changed. And it took many years, and it took tragedies in our family to make them change. And they became more westernized, more modernized, and to see that, you know what, our daughter or our son's happiness is far more important than what the people will say. Yeah. It's what the people will say.
Yeah, ditapio cosmos.
Yeah, ditapio cosmos, you know. Like, I remember a time when my mum, we'd broken up with my husband, and my mum came over and she's going, you're a bad mother. I'm going to tell everyone you're a bad mother if you don't get back with him because you've, you know, you made our name lose its reputation. And I remember looking at her and going, get out. Get out.
Wow.
You know, and she's like, what?
Yeah, so I had similar experiences when I left my marriage as well. And that's why I wanted to capture that generation in one of the stories. You know, like, I have a character who, her daughter's just been divorced and she thinks, like, it's the end of the world. Like, you know, Nabethano, I'm going to, like, you know what I mean?
I want to die. You've ruined it. I can't face my neighbours. I can't face anyone. Yeah, which comes the title, The Mother Must Die. It's the way she felt.
Yeah, definitely. And I think with that generation, it's a lot about the fact that they were also, you know, they came to Australia to get married, the women, you know, and they didn't really have any choice in the matter. No. There was poverty, they had to leave. And
they had to leave their families, which is also touched on in the book. You do touch on families leaving their parents, not having anyone to fall back on, not having anyone to speak to, because they're back from where they've come from and they've left for a better life, but they're also bringing to Australia some of the traditions that really shouldn't be there. But that was back in those times.
Yeah, I think that they definitely clung on to their cultural traditions, and that's why we felt them so much. Because it's so interesting, every time I go back to Cyprus and I, you know, perform some of my work, people are like, what are you talking about? We've moved on. Why are you guys so backwards? And it's just like, well, that's what happened. That's the migrant experience, you know. And I wanted to document that, you know, in the book, but also show change, you know, that, like, it's through, like you said, these hardships that our parents do change.
They do change.
You know, and I've seen it with my own family as well. So there is hope. maybe I do want to show that hope, you know, in
It's
this
also,
book.
look, our faith, because sometimes our parents will use faith to scare us,
Yeah.
to do the right thing according to them. But that's
Absolutely.
changed too, because there are now modern priests that try to bring in the young into the church and to talk to them, looking at from their eyes today in 2024 rather than back in the days, because things have changed. And then that's when a lot of the young people will say, you know, I'm not going to go to church if I'm going to have a priest tell me that I need to be a virgin when I get married,
Yeah.
because it just doesn't happen like that
Yeah,
anymore.
but we had that.
Although
upbringing.
I am proud to
Yeah.
say I was a virgin when I got married. That's why I had to be married a year within the date that we proposed, because it was kind of like a year is enough for him to wait, but then a year was enough for me to wait. So I remember years ago, people would say to me, years after, people would say to me, why did you get married so young? I said as a joke one day, I said, well, I wasn't allowed to have sex before marriage.
Yeah.
So how long do I wait? You know?
Yeah, and I wanted to show that in the book, and also what you know, what that does to your relationship to your body and sex, you
Yeah.
know. And I wanted to capture that in this book as well, because I feel like through the church and those kinds of teachings, we kind of lose connection with our own bodies and our
The
pleasure.
intimacy is gone, and it's
Yeah.
more like you're having sex, and that's what it's about, instead of you're making love.
Yeah, and you're
It's an
connecting.
intimacy thing.
Yeah.
Because I remember saying to a young person recently, I said, don't jump into sex straight away. Learn about your body, learn about how you feel, what makes you happy. Explore, be intimate in different ways, because once you go from nothing to sex, you can't go back, and then
Yeah.
it becomes all about sex. So you're not really building a foundation in that relationship, because it's all about sex.
Yeah, and I've spent years trying to undo a lot of the conditioning that I learnt through the church about sex and my body, and a lot of that work is going to be in my non-fiction book. But I
Fantastic.
did touch on it in that book as well, and I think that a lot of those teachings can be undone. You know,
It can be.
You know, it takes time. You know, but it really does drill down to another thing that I wanted to touch on with this work as well, which is that when we were raised to serve men, right?
We were, weren't we?
Yeah.
Raised to say, yeah, that's
Yeah.
it.
And
you have to cook, clean, put his... I remember my Sikorimeni first mother-in-law, and bless her soul, I've got some great fond memories of her. But I remember being young, because I remember I was only 17 when we were engaged, and she said to me, you need to put slippers on my son's feet. And I've gone, what? I go, no, my mum doesn't do that to my dad. And when I think back, it's like, I'm learning from my parents. They're my role models.
Yeah.
So if my mum was putting slippers and socks on my dad, I probably would have done the same. But I remember
Yeah.
saying to her, no, we don't do that. That's not going to happen. And my dad makes my mum coffee every morning. You know, it's like, oh wow, I am learning what sort of a man. But look, I was lucky, because I had and I have still a really good dad, a really good role model about males. And my dad has changed from when I was young to now. He's very, very different, especially in his thought process. He's almost like a mentor now, and it's like, wow, if I think about how I grew up,
People do change.
people do change.
And men do
you know,
change,
and we would go, like, say, to New Year's Eve parties, and we're with Kubati, you know, kids that we're growing up together, cousins. And the moment my dad sees me playing with the boys, mate, Xilo, what are you doing? And it's like, but we all know each other.
Yeah.
But now it's not like that. And
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, how old is your daughter now?
She's almost 18.
Almost 18. So she's either going to say, Mum, I've met someone, I've got a boyfriend, or she hasn't met someone just yet. But if she came to you and said, Mum, I've got a boyfriend, what sort of advice would you give her?
I don't think I would give her any advice, because I think she's already seen it through me.
That's good.
Like, I guess I've always been really open with her about my experiences. And when I say experiences, I mean the journey of going from being repressed to learning, to being in a lot of destructive like dynamics,
Yes.
to then learning how to love myself, and being celibate for long periods of time
Yeah.
to do that, and to then realizing that actually your own company is really great,
Yeah.
and you should be, and you should cherish that time, and only let people in your space that add to that.
Yeah,
you know?
support you in the right way.
Yeah, so I think that I hope that the guy that she brings, she will have, you know, thought that this person seems to add to my life, you know,
Yes.
and made that choice to bring him in. And you know, if she has any challenges along the way, we'll talk about them and stuff. But yeah, I've always been, I think I've gone kind of the opposite to my parents. So my parents didn't really discuss relationships and that much, and we still really don't, you know. Whereas with my daughter, I've been open, and I'm not really strict with her. I kind of let her just be, you know. And I'm strict about things like, you know, I don't want her wearing her earphones when she's walking down the street. You know, those things I'm strict with, and I'll come down hard on those things. But, you know, it's, I think it's all about like communication. And sometimes I have to communicate with her about things that are uncomfortable, and I don't know how to say it, you know, but I know that I have to talk about it, because if she is questioning what is going on with me, that's worse than her actually knowing,
Yeah.
because then we can have a conversation and I can tell her what I'm going through, you know.
Well, see, I had how you're saying about you need to be careful and you don't know how to say certain things. And I remembered when you were saying that, my mum and dad, it wasn't a few weeks ago, they were over my house, and my mum was playful, and we were talking about something, I can't remember, but she was sitting next to dad, and she became playful and hugged him, and she kisses him. And I just go, Mum, Dad, I've never seen you ever kiss Dad like that.
Yeah.
I've never seen you being playful. And I loved it. And it was like, why couldn't you have been like that a bit more while I was growing up?
And
she goes, what are you talking about? My mum says, I do this all the time. I go, Dad, does she? Because I thought my dad was the more nurturing one, because he loves the hugs and the kisses. And he's like, no, your mum does this all the time. I'm like,
yeah, and I do raise that in the book, because, you know, a lot of us were raised in those environments where,
you
know, we didn't see it. And then a lot of our generation also carried that into their relationships now. Like they won't, like I remember when my with my first love, but also the father of my daughter, if I ever showed, like, you know, public displays of affection, we'll call it, you know, it wasn't only, first of all, I'd never do that in front of my parents, but if I did that in front of sisters, cousins, sometimes they would say stuff to me.
Oh, you're
like,
joking.
you know, and it's so interesting, because it's like, wow, that's what they learned. So that's why they did it.
It's still the same, right? You know, my partner will come home, and if we're just home, we'll kiss on the mouth, hello, you know, give a hug. But if my parents are there,
you won't do it.
No, he'll still kiss me on the lips, but I actually feel embarrassed.
Yeah.
I still do, and it's like, I don't need to be embarrassed, because they like him. They can see we're happy, and it's nice. But for some reason, I get embarrassed, and it's sort of like I turn my back, you know, because I don't want you to see. It's not a pash. It's just like a mwah. But I still feel embarrassed. Or, you know, the movie's on, and my dad's staying up with us, and all of a sudden there's a couple now about to become intimate, and I get embarrassed.
Yeah, because I wasn't even allowed to watch kissing or sex on TV,
like, oh my God,
which I also talk about touch on in the book as well. So, but it's like all those things, they affect how you relate to yourself and your body and the opposite sex, and being intimate. It affects you. So I guess sometimes, you know, when I was being intimate or whatever, I would think, oh, this isn't normal. Why am I like this? You know, why am I like this? But then over time I realized, oh, I'm like this because of the way I've been brought up.
That's
you know,
right.
and I wanted to show that in the book. That's why I try and capture all the generations in this book, you know, from my daughter's generation, my generation, my mum's generation, my grandma's generation. So just all the generations, male, female, everyone, because everyone's affected in different ways, you know. And back to the title, The Mother Must Die. I will say that I did have someone say to me, a reviewer, I said, oh, can you review my book? And she said, I can't.
Why?
Because of the title, because my mother is no longer with us.
So she's taking the title. Yeah. Did she read the book?
No, she just didn't want to review it for that reason. She said to me, and that was very early on before the book had come out, and she was Anglo, right? And I thought, oh, that's interesting, because if you're from like
a different culture,
like
they
our
don't
culture,
say, oh,
like
I want to die because my son's embarrassed me. They don't care.
Yeah, like the WOG culture is like such, like everything is so, like, I guess people sometimes ask me about my work and the titles and how raw, and they don't, you have to understand that my culture is so dramatic. Everything's
everything's drama.
Everything is a Greek tragedy, you know. So of course, if that's how I was raised, my work is going to come out that way.
No,
you know?
I wouldn't say to you change it anyway, because Koraly, you know, you are different, and I think that's why you stand out. Just going back to the kids now, I said to my kids, because I've asked you about your daughter, I said to my kids, marriage is so sacred. And I'm not going to push you to get married for the same reasons my parents did. Times have changed and divorce rate is very high.
Yes.
So I don't care how many relationships you're in. It doesn't make you a bad person, unless of course every night you're out sleeping around. Well, then I could call you something if I wanted to, but it's not who you are. To me, if you meet somebody and they do something wrong, well, you need to think about it, because it may continue. That's their personality. Because you can't meet someone and then try to change them after they're married. That's who you met. That's what you've got. You can only evolve together. Yeah. So I said to them, I don't care also how long you have a partner for. Like my second daughter, middle daughter, she got married on her 14-year anniversary of being with her partner. To me, that didn't worry me. It worried my mum, because like, she's been together for so long. I said, Mum, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There are reasons why he hasn't proposed yet. He's still in uni. He's gone back to uni. They want to do things. It'll happen when it happens. So I said to them, the only time that I want to hear a marriage proposal and acceptance is when you're ready to have a family. So tell me that you're getting married to have a family, go for it. Don't tell me you want to get married because you want to travel, or you want to live together, or you want to be together, because I'm allowing that anyway.
Yeah.
So I've changed in my way of thinking, but I've also helped my parents evolve like that as well. And certain things that my children have done differently to many people, you know, we talk about it. So I am truly blessed to have my parents, but I guess it's also me understanding my parents and knowing how to drive them to get the outcome I want. Almost like a parent knows how to drive their child. So I have learned my parents' thought process. So they've become predictable in some ways. So I can sit and say, let's say to my oldest daughter, look, when you say this to your young papu, this is how they're going to react. Don't get mad. These are the reasons why. And then with a few days later, they will ring me and they won't know how to bring it up, but eventually they will. So I'm going to prepare myself and I'll know how then to drive it. And it's exactly like that.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Yeah, you do learn. Yeah, you learn the patterns, and you learn when to go. Oh, I gotta go now. Something's on the stove. Bye.
Yeah. And I've noticed that my mum and dad have changed in that we were having a conversation a couple of weeks ago, and I can't remember what the topic was. Now, normally my mum will put her foot down and carry on, but she used a different process that threw me off, and she was like, to my dad, how can we explain to our daughter, in a different way so she can understand? It was like, huh? You've changed.
Yeah.
Like, this doesn't make sense. It really threw me off. But I liked how they put forward what they wanted to put forward. They didn't do it in a way that I'd get my back up and get angry. So it was almost like I've become predictable. If we say this to her, she's going to just crack it, rip our heads off, you know, and we're going to argue because she's ripped her head off and we've forgotten why we're actually, what we're talking about.
I think you and I are, like, I think when you've gone through a divorce in our culture, it's likely that, well, we've kind of created earthquakes in our families, right? And our families have had to adapt.
Exactly.
But the people that haven't gone through like those kinds of things, they probably would. Their parents might not be, or their family might not be as evolved as ours. You know, it's because of that.
Well, the sad truth is, I was the first to have a child early. I was the first to get married early. This is in the circle of my family.
Me too. I was too.
I was the first to get divorced,
me too.
I rocked it really bad.
Yeah, me too.
But then my parents changed because I remember them saying, you know, "Tira pio cosmos," you know, what are the people going to say? And they must they're going to be mocking us. And then when they saw a year later that I didn't turn into the person that people were telling them, your daughter's going to become an SLUT, she's going to dump the kids on you and go clubbing every night. When they saw that didn't happen, I remember a year later for them coming to my house and saying, "We're so proud of you." And I said, "But you know me, I wouldn't have done that." She goes, "Well, we listen to other people." And the funny thing is, we listen to the people, but now we're looking at them and they're going through what we went through in a worse way. So it's called karma. And I'm going, oh, okay. All right, you know. So, yeah, no, I'm really happy with the stuff you've touched in the book. You also touched on a story where a father and son no longer have a relationship for lots of reasons. And the father finally, after so many years, decides he's going to go to his son's opening night where he will surprise the son. And he was hoping that after 10, 20 years, they're going to embrace father and son and they're together. And they'll form a relationship. Because obviously now the father has changed his thought process and the son has grown. So he goes to the opening night and the father sees things and wonders, hang on a minute, something's not right here. So he's already feeling something different. But then the son does say to him, "You weren't here. What are you doing here? I want you out of my life. I don't care about you." So the father leaves heartbroken and ends up dying because he's had a heart attack from all that pain. And I guess, you know, the title, "The Mother Must Die," is pain that a mother feels and she wants to die, but she doesn't really want to die. It's just like, it's less painful. But we do also know that women can be a little bit more stronger than men. So the father leaving this opening night and the grief and the pain, he has a heart attack, he dies. You know, and it was quite sad because I was actually sad when I read it because I could reflect on stories that I've heard along the way from families, you know, and even families like they have their grandchildren, and we're talking back in those days, they have grandkids, and because the daughter or the son does not call their children by their names, they actually don't want to see them again and don't want anything to do with the grandkids, which is so sad. And I don't know if it happens nowadays, but I think
I'm sure it does. I'm sure people do cut members of their family out
just because of a name.
Sorry, what was that?
Just because you haven't named the children, the grandkids after
Oh
them.
No, just like for different reasons.
Oh, for different reasons,
you know.
yeah.
But you know, it's interesting because with that character, when Christos Tolkas was interviewing me about my book, he said, "Oh, you know, the way that I create empathy for Francesco, who's the father," and I said, I don't even like him, you know, like
you didn't like him,
you know, but it doesn't come across in the right. It's interesting because a lot of the characters that I'm writing about, I have issues with, right?
I got that sense though.
Yeah, you did get that sense.
I did get the sense, but maybe it's because
about Francesco
and other characters.
Yeah.
But maybe it's because I know you, and we do chat together and have fun.
Yeah.
You know, we do little interviews and they're cute, but I guess I get to know you and I can understand who you are and it's coming through the book. That's why I wanted to ask you if any of those chapters were part of your story.
Just like I said, bits and pieces, but a lot of it was also taken from things I'd heard or, but with that story specifically, the father of my daughter, he had an estranged relationship from his father, and his father passed away before, I think, like when he was young.
So they didn't reconcile?
Yeah, they didn't reconcile, but it inspired me to write a story about what his life might have been like, and what would have happened if they did
reconcile.
Like if they did come together.
I was actually hoping that after he left, I was kind of hoping that his son would go, what am I doing? He's an old man, he'll probably die one day. Maybe he might have done that later. Yeah, but sort of stopped. It was like,
but that's the thing with the story. And I don't know, I just felt like, it was evident that also he hadn't done a lot of things right as well, Francesco. So, but this is the thing, it's like, today when we talk about domestic violence and women's rights and all these things, I just feel like a lot of the feminist narratives are very like, hate all men, and I didn't want that book to be like that. Like, I may have some issues with Francesco, but I still wanted to tell his story because it was important to tell the story.
Because it does happen. It does happen.
Yeah, it does happen. And when we're talking before about families changing and people reconciling, and I've gone through periods where I haven't seen my family for a long time because of the way that they've been treating me, and having to set boundaries with people. But people do change, because I always think to myself, I changed. If I changed so much, if I went from a repressed housewife who did everything everyone told her to do to this, right? Well, then men can change, and they're not going to change if we're yelling at them. I tell you that, they're not.
No, but it's also, I still think it's also the responsibility of their fathers.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be able to say, you know what, when I was young, I did it this way, but it's not the right way.
Yeah.
It should be this way.
Yeah, and I really want men to read this book, men from our culture.
I think it's very important men to read the book.
Because they're raising sons. And, things might not change for our generation, for violence against women, but if we instill better values in our sons, that's what I really want for this book. I want parents of our generation to understand that we can influence the future by the way that we raise our children, and 100%. We can learn from the mistakes of our past. We can learn. If we don't learn, we're not going to change.
No, which means our kids are going to find things difficult to understand.
Yeah,
there's a conflict, because hang on, I think this is how it should be, but my mum is adamant it's got to be like that. How do we make this work?
Yeah, so that's why I also get very much like, unfollowed on social media for my feminist views, because it's like we have to have this certain one narrative for feminism, and I don't want that to be my narrative of feminism. I want it to be what I'm saying, which is that, we may not be able to change things for our generation, but we can for the future. And misogyny, that is instilled from parents into children. It's also instilled through things like, the books we read, the things we watch on TV. There's so many things our government can do to help violence against women that just don't do. Even just simple things like, there's not enough, alcohol and drug rehabilitation in Victoria, and a lot of violence against women happens when people are using drugs. And
drugs or alcohol.
Yeah, and it's like, but people ignore that. They go, oh no, it's men. But yeah, all right, it's men, but it's that too.
Yes.
And if we fix that, we might be able to save 5 lives. 10 lives. We might not be able to save everyone, but we might be able to save someone.
You do have a strong opinion. I like most of your opinions on social media. And it's great because I see 2 different Koraly. So I've got Koraly who writes poetry, Koraly that does these sort of stories. And then there's Koraly who has strong opinion and wants to create awareness to make this world be a better place and be part of that community to make a better place. I want to ask you, if you could change the title of this book, and that's based on, one of the people you asked to talk, to be a critic on the book. If you could change the title, what could you call it? Have you ever thought about that?
I called it, it's traditional to call your books, like poetry, short stories, one of the titles of the stories or the poems.
Yeah, because there is a story in The Mother Must Die.
Yeah.
But although The Mother Must Die, the meaning behind it, I did see it in about 3 or 4 different stories.
Yeah.
But then there was the story, The Mother Must Die.
Yeah.
What could you call it?
I would still call it The Mother Must Die. I wouldn't change it.
Is that because it's catchy?
No, it's because I just feel like our governments and our societies are set up in a way for the mother to be destroyed. Even that story, when the story about the young daughter who's writing about her relationship, she lives between 2 houses, and it touches on the family law system. Yeah. And how the way that the system is set up is that the way that the family law system is set up now is the one with the most money wins, right? And usually who has the most money? The man, right? We have a society that's set up where women are supposed to sacrifice for men, so it's likely that the man has the most money. So when it comes to things like protecting children in the family law system, the mother is destroyed, Die, like die is a intense word, but my culture is intense.
That's right, because you do touch in the book on a number of chapters being Cypriot.
Yes.
You do touch on that, and the racial slurs that the ethnics used when they came here. So it'll be like destraleza, and the indiano, mirizune, they smell this and that and the other. I mean, you know what, it's still out there.
Yes.
But not to the degree of back then. So it was the Astrali and the wogs.
Yeah.
It was like that. We are getting better.
But that's still, that is still stuff that I hear. The Indiani and this and that. And, it's like, there's still racism, but our parents experienced racism, so of course we became racist. It's been
instilled because
it's not because Greeks are racist. No, it's because Australia is racist. When new people come here, there's racism, so then they become racist against other cultures, and then the cycle continues and continues. But by publishing, different cultures, and it's interesting because I don't think there's been like a Cypriot author publishing Australian mainstream fiction.
Which you have got, and you won an award.
Which one? Oh, the one on the poetry.
Yeah, which one exactly? I'm losing count now on how many awards you've been getting, and you know what? I'm super proud.
Thank you.
Because I haven't known you for that long, but from the time I did meet you and the interviews and little catch-ups and your little books, it's like, wow. And I remember saying to my mum not long ago, I said, Mum, how I told you about Koraly Dimitriadis and, her poetry? And she goes, no. Okay, she won an award, Mum. She's gone overseas. Like, it's going to be a movie. And my mum's like, wow, through me. And I'm like, I'm so proud of her. Like, who would have thought back then that she's going to be where she is today? But you've worked hard.
Oh, yeah.
Because you haven't stayed in Melbourne, in the western suburbs waiting for it. You've actually gone away. You've gone to Bali, and it's like, wow, now she's in Bali promoting her books. Like, who would have thought? You haven't stopped, and the rewards now are worthy for you. You are worthy of all the rewards that you're getting and the ignition that you're getting, the recognition out there. So I am proud of you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that I did do a lot of travel, because when I first went into the art sector, and I didn't feel really embraced for my work, and was kind of, ruffled a lot of feathers and was kind of stonewalled. I told the Cypriot government, this is what's happening to me, can you support me? And they have been giving me support with my travel for so many years. I'm so thankful, and it doesn't cover everything, but it's enough for me to be able to do that.
That's because you're strong enough to get out there and do it. Do the hard work yourself. Go and ask.
Yeah.
A lot of women haven't got that strength.
Yeah.
A lot of women will say, I can't do this on my own. I can't do it on my own. I can't. I need to be married. I need to be in the house with my husband because I can't. But they don't realise that if you actually step outside on your own, you actually are strong.
And can do it.
And can do it. But it's that little in between that, you know, they need the right guidance.
Yes.
Because I myself know that if I want something, I can do it. I remember a late boss of mine had said to me, passed well since then, he said to me, Roula, you're a female in a man's world. If you want something, ask for it. If the worst is a no, who cares?
Yeah,
and I've
that's
always
so
lived
true.
by that. But he did say one thing, don't wear mini skirts and make sure your breasts aren't too much exposed. Not in the way that I know what you're thinking right now. No, not in that way. What he said was, because if you want them to take you seriously,
Yeah.
make sure that you still dress classy, short skirt above the knee, but in a classy way.
Yeah.
They will look at your face and listen to your words.
Yeah.
But if you use your body sexuality, they will listen, but not really. They'll be looking.
Yeah.
And you won't get what you want. But if you want their full attention and basically what you say is what they're going to do,
Yeah.
you need to dress like be feminine.
Yeah. But professional.
But like not being professional, more classy.
Yeah.
So you're going to look sexy, but you've got to be classy.
Yeah.
And they will look at your face
Yeah. That's
and listen to your
interesting.
words. So, because I knew when you looked, when I said the first part, like, I know where she's going now.
I mean, look, you know, we're not, let's be clear, like women aren't really taken as seriously as men when they speak, you know, when they're just
But
not.
I think it's the way we present ourselves, the way we speak, present ourselves. We need to have confidence.
Yeah, and I think things are definitely changing, you know. But back on the point that you said before about women being too scared, I think when you've gone through a divorce in a very conservative culture as we have, you've survived, you know, and you stand tall, then you feel like you can almost do anything. I don't know if you relate to that,
No,
you know, because it's so hard.
It is
so hard. And you know, a lot of it's to do with like the guilt that is placed on us. Like, how dare you break our dreams of getting divorced?
It's not just that. You've also got the kids that will say to you, Mummy, you broke the family unity.
Yeah.
You know, because you can't really explain it at that age. It's very, very difficult. And that does play a huge part on us, you know, and it could be 10, 20 years later and that still haunts you, those words. Because let's face it, you know, we divorce, but it has an impact on the kids too.
Yes. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think that I still feel though that, you know, even in the arts space, the media space, it's you know, we do see more often than not like men being the ones that are writing the opinion articles, writing the, you know, even just things like, you know, men are the ones judging the competitions, or, you know, like there's still inequality in terms of in that space as well, you know. But that's why, you know, getting my work published is significant, because it's a feminist voice in our community.
It is.
You know, and that's rewarding for me, because I want to, you know, inspire other women to, you know, chase their dreams, and like you said, not be afraid to, you know, to take hold of their life and do what they want to do.
Which is what you've done.
Yeah.
So, Koraly, have you met the man yet?
I'm happily single at the moment.
Are you looking for someone as a companion to brighten your life, not clip your wings, as my partner says?
I think, because, and I'll talk about this more in my non-fiction book, but I have done a lot of like therapy work on myself to heal a lot of my past wounds, and part of that has involved spending a lot of time on my own, which and being happy with who I am.
That's
you
right.
know, and so I have definitely moved from that obsessive energy that I really capture in that book of chasing the guy, to just I'm happy on my own.
He can chase you.
You know, you want to break down my door and get to me? Okay, break it down, but otherwise I'm not running after anyone. And that's where I'm at right now. So, you know, obviously, as you know, when you're a single mum, your children are your priority, you know, but as they get older, then more space becomes available in your life.
And you need to change as well and bring stuff for yourself.
Yeah.
Koraly, the next book?
The next book is, I've got a couple of poetry books that I want to bring out, but I'm hoping that the next book that will be published will be my novel, which is finished. I'm just waiting for a publisher, the right publisher, because I've always, even with these short stories with Punch and Watman, I didn't just go with them because they wanted it. I went with them. I submitted to them because I thought they could be a good fit. And I think that with my novel, because it does have such a high romance element to it, it needs to be like a publisher that does publish, you know, more romantic books.
Yeah.
You know, so so I'm just waiting now to find the right publisher, not the right guy, the right publisher.
For now anyway. Koraly, thank you so much. We look forward to the next book. I'm definitely going to read the next book since it's going to have parts of your life in it. And guys, you know, you need to read this book and then read the next book.
And all the poetry books.
And all the poetry, and then go knocking at her door, which is also touched on it.